What's up, guys? We are back with another edition of the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Chevalier Mortgage. We've got a fun episode today, a little bit different. We're going to be talking about rugby with Colton Strickler of DNVR Rugby. Now, my knowledge of the sport is extremely limited, but it was cool to pick his brain and kind of ask him how it compares to other sports. And for those that, don't know, there's actually a lot of CSU connections to USA Rugby, the Colorado Exos, and beyond. So it was just cool to kind of pick his brain, go through all of it, and then we also, reminisced a little bit about our time at CSU. It was fun. It was a really fun episode. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Obviously a little bit different. We talked about, what kind of former CSU athletes could be good rugby players. It's actually a topic we're going to revisit in the future, like draft a rugby team based on former CSU athletes. But, my example was Capri Bibbs, and we kind of talked about that. It was just a lot of fun. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So before I get into that, I'm going to shout out our partners over at Chevalier Mortgage. Right now, if you visit them at dnvrmortgage.com, you can enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat of your choice. But you're also going to get set up with a free consultation to discuss all your options. You're probably hearing how great the mortgage rates are right now. But Mike and Virginia, they are not just your typical mortgage company. They've got phenomenal rates, but really what makes them different is Mike is a certified financial planner. He looks at so much more than just the rate when designing your home loan. They're a small, family-owned company, so you're always going to feel like a person, not a number. They're also proud CSU supporters and DNVR members. I love helping people in our community, and they love getting you guys the best deals possible. Again, visit them at dnvrmortgage.com. Enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat of your choice. Get set up with the free consultation. Or give Mike a call directly at 970-412-2472. That's 970-412-2472. Or you can always visit dnvrmortgage.com. Michael Chevalier, NMLS number 1931006. Virginia Chevalier, NMLS number 1910631. All right, joining me on the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Chevalier Mortgage, we've got a special guest, a good friend of mine, Colton Strickler of DNVR Rugby. He actually has many titles now. He's a very busy guy with all of the content that he's creating through various platforms. But Colton, how's it going, my man? I mean, aside from the sleep deprivation in the playoffs.
Yeah, we were just talking about it's tough this time of year with all these playoffs, these late games. But I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on, Justin. Looking forward to jumping into this, man. It's going to be fun.
Well, we're going to go over a variety of stuff on today's podcast. We're going to go into, some territory that I don't typically branch out into that frequently, and that is rugby, which I'm excited. Colton probably knows more about rugby than anybody I know. It's not obviously the biggest sport, but it's growing a ton in Colorado, right?
You're right. This is the time to pay attention to rugby. So this is the whole timing of joining DNVR last year, and with everything going on, like rugby's exploding here in the United States. Like this is the time to jump on board. And so I'm hoping we can convert some new fans today on this show.
It's like Bitcoin. You got to buy now. It's the right time. It's about to explode. We're giving you the sound advice to get in, and you can still do it and be that guy that's like, I liked rugby like way before it was cool. You don't want to be the dude that jumps in like 8 years from now when everybody already has their gear.
Exactly. This is the window. Take it while you can. And I'm thinking we're going to be able to get some guys into the show, some men and women into the show. We're going to create some new fans with these CSU connections, because there actually is a handful of them pretty high up in the rugby world. And I think people, aren't really aware of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, let's kind of just dive right into it. Obviously, I know the club program at CSU historically is pretty good. They've had a lot of success, even won some championships, I believe, over, the course of, since they've been a program. I know the one guy that went through is Pinkelman, right? Ben Pinkelman.
Ben Pinkelman, that's at the top of the list. That's a perfect place to start, Justin, because he is probably the most, notable Ram rugby alumni. Ben Pinkelman was a guy that was at CSU while we were there. One of the projects I worked on at the Collegian was Ben Pinkelman actually kept a Olympic notebook for us while he was in Rio, because he was a member of the Sevens team that competed at the 2016 Olympics in Rio. He's a Cherry Creek graduate. like I mentioned, was at CSU while we were there. And he really is like one of the stars of like this USA Sevens team. And so I guess, Justin, if we really want to get into the weeds, there's like two main types of rugby that we play here in the United States. So we mainly play rugby union, which is a different like code. So there's rugby league and rugby union, but rugby union's kind of what's big here. Rugby league's kind of bubbling up, but rugby union, that's what the pro competition is. That's what they play like at the Rugby World Cup, and then they play sevens, which is a variation of union.
What's the difference then?
So league is a less amount of people, and then like a phase is like a play. So if I run the ball and I get tackled, that's like a phase. There's like set number of phases in league. In union, you could realistically have the ball for the whole game if you wanted. Like it's make it, take it like basketball. So you score, they kick it back to you. You could realistically have the ball the entire game. So there's no like set number of phases. But union, that's where the money's at here. That's what people care about. So sevens, so main rugby union is 15 aside, 15 on 15. 2 40-minute halves, 10-minute halftime. Sevens is 7 on 7 with a 2-minute halftime. You play on the same size field. So it's been equated to playing 3v3 basketball like on a football field. You have to be in crazy good shape. It's literally nonstop action. It's, a lot of one-on-one breaks. So you got to make your tackles. And that's what Pinkelman's like. That's what Pinkelman's good at. And he's a monster, like in the breakdown. So like in hockey, he does the dirty work, right? He's getting the tough yards. He's always in the rucks, like securing balls. He is just like a grinder, and he's made his money being that grinder, like for the USA Sevens team. So like I mentioned, he was in Rio in 2016. Hadn't played 15s, I think, for 3 years, and he got invited to be on the Rugby World Cup team in 2019 in Japan. That was like a big thing because you don't really see a lot of crossover between sevens and 15s because it is such like a specialized.
So distinctly different.
Yeah. I can go into some other stuff here in a minute to just like about sevens. But Pinkelman, he's the top of the list. He's more than likely going to be on the team for this Summer Olympics in Tokyo. It would be a huge, huge shock if he wasn't. So this team's kind of like built around, he's one of the core pieces of the USA Sevens team. And Sevens has gotten so much bigger here in the United States, even from 2016, where they have the international Sevens circuit. So they're playing and there's a stop in the USA, there's a stop in Canada, there's a stop in Hong Kong. Like that's their competition that the world plays in on a year by year basis. And they're making runs at the top spot, like in these world competitions. So this is going to be the year that the USA makes a run at a medal. They're going to play for a while at this Olympics. So, and he's going to be like right in the middle of that. And that's pretty cool. Have a CSU Ram, a local Denver guy, Cherry Creek High School graduate, like in the middle of all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chance to represent the US. Obviously, like that's a massive deal to play in the Olympics while you're just a college age athlete is insane in itself. But the fact that he's able to cross over, and it just kind of shows, how dynamic of an athlete he is. What exactly about rugby, just for if somebody was into, like the normal American sport, I don't want to say normal, that sounds like an insult, the traditional American sports.
You can say that though, because that's true. Like it is an outside, like niche sport. But continue your question. Go for it.
Like what would appeal to them about rugby? I mean, obviously it's really physical. It seems like it's one of those where everyone that plays it is just kind of relentless. Like they're a different type of mentality, like that just freak type competitive dude.
I think like maybe, and this might be a cliche answer that rugby people won't like, but it's so true. It's literally a combination of what you like about so many different sports, right? It's free flowing like soccer and hockey. It's very fast paced like hockey. It's rough like hockey. There's football elements to it, obviously with the tackling and the running and even like the scoring methods. Like that's very similar, but it's also like basketball in a way. That's something I've kind of picked up like in this last year or so.
Like a lot of flow.
Yeah, like a lot of flow, like a lot of like, moving without the ball. You obviously can't pass forward in rugby, so it's a lot of like space manipulation, just by where you're at on the field. And even like the ball handling stuff, like in terms of passing, I've noticed like with this Colorado XO program, which I'm looking forward to talking about here in a little bit too, Justin, like these guys are coming from different sports in this program. And a lot of them are basketball players. They have basketball backgrounds, and those guys can pass, in way more advanced ways than I ever would have imagined so quickly because they have been playing 3-on-3 basketball for their whole life. So like they can do these like cheeky little, back flips, or like they can go like behind their back or like behind their head, and it works because they've been playing basketball like that forever. So it takes like a combination of all these little sports. And, so it just kind of depends, like whatever you like about whatever the sport you like it probably exists in rugby, to be honest. Like, and maybe the only comparison that doesn't exist is baseball. I haven't really found out a way to compare baseball to rugby yet, but I'm sure if you give me some more time, I can probably come up with something.
I think you hit it right on the head. That's kind of what I was going for. I've been trying to get more into rugby. I sometimes feel a little bit lost when I'm watching it, but I see the elements of it where it'll just be subtle, the way somebody moves, and it's like, oh, I just created that running lane for him there, and all of a sudden the dude takes off. It's really entertaining.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of issues with the way that, I don't know, with rugby in general, like how to consume it. One of the things I always talk about is there is so much of it, but for people like you and for people that want to get into it, that's almost a good thing at the same time, because very truly, the more you watch it, the more you'll understand. And there's a lot of different intricacies to it, but you don't need to understand all the intricacies to like it. And I think that's a unique thing about it as well. You can just seeing the long runs. You can seeing the big tackles. You can whatever you like about rugby, that's okay. You can like that, and you'll learn the intricacies and the ins and outs of it later as you watch more matches.
I mean, that's kind of the beauty of a lot of sports, right? You can get as deep into it as you want. Baseball, if you're at its most basic levels, people playing catch and trying to hit it. But then obviously, when you get into, managing a lineup and all that, it's it's as deep as you make it.
Right. And I think there's a stigma I've seen a lot with hockey, especially hockey Twitter, how they're kind of protective of hockey. If you don't understand pieces of hockey, you kind of get shamed for it. And that could not be any more untrue in rugby. If you don't understand rugby, you end up going to a rugby match. I promise you sit next to somebody that knows it. They'll tell you everything you want to know. You can ask them a million questions. They won't get annoyed. I had instances. I was covering the 2019 MLR final in San Diego when I worked for the league, 2 years ago. And the guy that was sitting next to me in the press box had never seen a game before in his life. So spent a lot of my time, while I was taking notes, explaining to him, this is what happened. This is what this means. This is why this is important. I'm glad that I was there for him so he could understand and enjoy the match and, get enough to put a story out. That's kind of, I feel like everybody across the sporting landscape of rugby feels that same way, because they just want people to like it.
That's encouraging to hear. I think the whole gatekeeping aspect of a lot of sports is lame.
Right.
If anything, you should want I know it's kind of, people are the same way with artists. When artists blow up your favorite rapper or whatever, it's, I listened to him on SoundCloud. Now he's playing the Pepsi Center. This sucks. And it's well, wouldn't you want them to be successful?
Exactly. Isn't that when you first started listening to this guy, you want to show him to all of your friends, you want to show this music off. And it's the same thing with sport. Yeah, that's a good point. I've never thought of it like that.
So, we talked about Pinkelman a little bit. I kind of want to go back to the collegian story, just kind of to give people a little bit of a background. What kind of information was in there? What was that experience like? That seems like one of the more unique student media pieces that I've ever heard of. I remember when you did it, and I remember liking it, but just kind of give everybody an idea of what that was like.
Yeah. So especially with Ben, like I said, Ben's a Cherry Creek guy. So he's a guy I kind of knew coming up in rugby through high school and stuff. And I thought it was incredibly unique. And that's back when I was interning for Mile High Sports, for my CSU, I needed that to
internship credit. Yeah.
Yeah. And when that came out, when they announced the team that was going to Rio, I remember telling my editor, we should do, this is cool, man. This is a high school. This kid went to high school at Cherry Creek. He's at CSU and he's about to play in the Olympics. And I remember him being so nonchalant about it. And I was okay, maybe this isn't the spot for it. So I was well, whatever. I'm the assistant, editor at the Collegian right now. I can just do this. So I ended up reaching out to Ben, got a hold of him. He was super helpful. I remember I did that interview. It was one of the most unsafe interviews I've ever done. When I first talked to him, I was driving my stick shift 96 A4, down Spear Boulevard when he called me back. So I'm taking notes, trying to not get in a car accident. But he just kind of talked to me about this has literally been his dream. All throughout college, he would go to these different camps and try to get selected for, these different traveling sides. And it just never happened until it did, until he finally busted through and he made the freaking Olympic team. Like he was playing in Rio. So Ben, he was nice enough to keep a short diary for us. I think it ended up being like once every, couple weeks or something like that, but just kind of writing about like what he was doing, what his experience was like in the Olympics and a couple of the matches, of course. So pretty, I was glad we got to be able to do it. I was very thankful that he helped us do it for free. Obviously student media, we don't have a lot of money to toss around. And that's like a big ask of somebody like, hey, I know you're competing against like the best athletes in the world, but do you want to like keep a journal for us too that we can publish and let people know at CSU, like how's it going on? So I was very glad and thankful that he did it. I thought it was a cool piece. And I guess that's like one of my go-to things, like even with this World Cup coming up, I want to try to do that again. I think that's a unique way to go about documenting something.
I mean, I love the idea, and I just love the whole backstory there, because I think, how could you not root for a guy like that? Obviously, he's a local kid, so you're rooting for him there. He's a CSU Ram, you're going to root for him there. But then, he's a guy who had to work for it. He had to strive for it. Now he's like the superstar. Those are the best kind of stories, the Tim Duncans of the world, where it's like, he's like, I don't know, I played basketball and then I ended up being amazing at it.
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, looking forward to seeing what Ben does with this tour upcoming here, because he is, he's 26 now, 27. He's hitting the prime of his like athletic life. And like I said, they're going to make a run at a medal. It's going to be a fun summer. It's going to be, again, a lot of late nights, because I think those matches are like 3 a.m. or something. So I'm going to be very tired walking around like a zombie for those 3 weeks.
You just got to caffeine up, dude.
I know. I'm not a coffee guy, but I'm like, I wonder when that point will happen for me where I just start guzzling coffee. I feel like it's coming quick.
What about you, like Red Bull or any of those other alternatives?
Yeah, I try not to. I really try to stay away from it. I am like a Monster guy if I'm doing a long road trip or something, but I'm trying to like keep those in the single digits over the course of a year. I'm not trying to drink too much of that stuff.
Probably wise advice for all of us.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the other CSU connections then. Obviously, Pinkelman, I think, a lot of Ram fans are probably going to look him up now and follow the story, and I encourage them to do so. I'll continue to get Colton on here because I want to, one, help grow DNVR rugby, and we'll talk about all that stuff, but I just want to give people, more tastes of why they should be rooting for it, especially as Ram fans.
Right, and we're going to have the prime opportunity, Justin, with the Olympics coming up. There'll be plenty of stuff to talk about. Rugby has been on a hiatus, really, like every other sport. It wasn't as quick to come back as some of this other stuff. It's been nice that we could watch stuff overseas. But another guy you can watch right now is Evan Geist. He's a Mullen graduate. He played rugby at CSU around the same time as Ben Pinkelman. I think he graduated in 2017. But he plays for the New England Free Jacks of MLR. That's the top rugby competition in the country. And he's a big second rower. He's a fun guy to watch. Another local guy, like I was just mentioning. And he's been, playing out in New England for 2 years now. That's a guy you can watch right now every Saturday. He's consistently cracking starting lineups. So another guy to keep on your radar with Pinkelman there. There's a couple other people too we can jump into. So Mose Timoteo and Sarah Shabbat, those are coaches at the Colorado XOs, which is what we've been covering primarily here at the DNVR Rugby. Really like two USA international legends, like both had very long, successful careers for the USA Eagles. And those guys, Mose is the attack coach at the XOs and Sarah Shabbat coaches the forwards. And both of them coach the CSU program in their spare time too. So like, I don't think they get any money for that. They live down in Denver and they're driving up couple times a week, traveling for matches, like just to, help continue to grow rugby, especially grow rugby at CSU. And then there's another guy too, a guy I've had on the DNVR Rugby podcast once, another guy I did a story on while I was at the Collegian, Zach Pounga. He is a monster. He played football at CSU. Justin, played for the Texans a little bit. He got signed like during the lockout years, so that made it tough for an undrafted fullback to make the Houston Texans. But had some time with the Texans. He played professional rugby in the first iteration of pro rugby. It was literally called Pro Rugby. It was the professional rugby organization. That was a very short-lived league. It was 1 year long. But he was one of the best players in that competition, CSU guy. Now he's an MMA fighter. So that guy just has done it all. A 3-time professional athlete, just doing like the craziest, most badass sports you can do. So there's
don't get an altercation with that dude.
That guy will beat you up real bad. So that's kind of the top CSU connections that come right off the top of my head. But like that's kind of my point is like anywhere you look, if you look at the international level, if you look at, the highest professional rugby level here in the United States, we've got some coaches here at this unique EXO program. And then Zach Pauk is just a freak of nature. But you can kind of look anywhere and just see like there's Rams in the rugby universe. And it's kind of cool because like I was mentioning, this is when rugby's blowing up, and there's some Rams that have their hands in it for sure.
It's just cool to see so many different influences and to see these guys like competing at the highest level. Mm-hmm. I want to kind of get into the MLR stuff and the Colorado XOs just because it's been kind of hard for some people to follow. I think there's been a lot of transition with like they had a team and then they were the development. And so let's just kind of explain that so people can
I'm happy to explain this dynamic, Justin, because you're right. It is confusing. There are even some hardcore rugby people that are confused by this whole thing. So MLR started in 2017. So I was lucky enough. I worked for the league for 2 years. The Raptors were like a founding member of the team. They competed up until 2020 when the season was shortened. It was canceled because of COVID. The Raptors made the decision to withdraw from the MLR. They weren't jiving with like the direction the league was going. Like when the league originally started, it was been, this is all about developing American rugby. As the league evolved, it's just becoming a competitive league. And to win matches, you need to sign foreign players. And a lot of the teams are getting filled up with foreign players, taking slots away from American players, the development opportunities. So they made the decision to leave and kind of do their own thing, try to develop American talent in their own way. And that's just kind of birthed this idea of the Colorado XOs. So the Colorado XOs stands for crossovers. A lot of people say, hug, kiss, stuff like that. But it's the crossover. So they, for the last year, like this has been in their brain for 2 years. They did like a test run a couple years ago at Aspen Ruggerfest, which is a very fun tournament in the fall. If you're ever in Aspen in September, you got to check that out. So they wanted to recruit like just better athletes. The best athletes in this country are doing different things. They're playing football, they're wrestling, they're playing basketball, they're doing things, where there's money, where there's a lot of opportunity. Rugby is a opportunity that it's just becoming an opportunity, right? With these professional leagues, this is turning into a legitimate way to make money and keep playing sports before you just have to, be an adult and get a real job, to be honest. So they've been, this last year or so, they've been recruiting guys from college programs, guys that were fringe bubble NFL guys that have played in the CFL, stuff like that, XFL, and just be like, hey, we have this opportunity. You can move here, you can train, you can learn how to play rugby. You have a legitimate chance to, make it to the MLR, make it to overseas, or make it to the U.S. national team. All you got to do is just agree and buy into this. And that's kind of what they did. So they brought in almost 40 guys in January, played a 10-match season this year. And it was just like, it was the most fun I've ever had, like being around any program, like seeing how they progressed, seeing them pick it up, seeing them like very literally transform into rugby players. And it's birthed, I think, the number out there right now, there's 6 guys, I think, that will be playing like in the MLR this year that had never touched a rugby ball before January 11th, like will be like playing in the highest level of, professional rugby in the United States, like as early as July or end of June. So they went 5-5 this year. So they played, a lot of these MLR Academy teams, the MLR players of tomorrow were playing against these guys that had played rugby for 15, 20 years, whatever, held their own. I think over the course of the year, their combined, point differential, I think the matches they lost were like by 19 points combined. So they were in every single game. Just so much fun to be around, so much fun to see like how it worked and how it's going to go. Cause I think no matter which way you spin it, this was a success. And I think a lot of teams and a lot of, especially these fan base of these MLR teams are going to be very pleasantly surprised with the caliber of player that they will be getting that, like I said, had never touched a rugby ball back in January. So it was
that's a pretty impressive success rate. If 6 dudes that are like, roughly 40, considering it was the first time that it ever been tried, for it to be such a massive success. That's cool to see that they had the vision and then they were able to, see it through fruition.
Right. I know, Justin, you're an Alabama football fan, right? I've seen you
Yeah.
take some heat for that online before. That was like kind of, if you go back and if people are interested, go back to listen to episode I did with Peter Pask in, I think it was September or October or something of last year. He's kind of like been in charge of the recruitment of all this stuff. And so he like talks about the measurables he's looking for. And that's like the analogy he's used through this whole thing was like, if the Alabama Crimson Tide took their football team and all their resources and everything, their recruitment, their coaches, like their facility, like all that money, and they just taught their team how to play rugby for 1 year, like how good could that team be? That's kind of like what they've like based this whole thing off of. And it's what the players that they brought in this year are not Alabama football. I don't think anybody played at Alabama, but there are like, it's SEC level guys. Like there's guys that played at Ole Miss. One of the best players on the team this year, you know, Glenn Robinson, the big dog, he played for the Bucks.
Yeah.
His youngest son, Jalen, was a monster this year. Like his youngest son, Jalen, came in here. I don't think he missed a tackle all year. Like he's a monster. He's going to be one of the guys that winds up playing in the MLR this year. And again, a guy that had never thought about playing rugby before he heard about this opportunity. So Jalen came in here. There's a guy, David Still. He played literally every position at like Saginaw Valley State. Didn't get an opportunity to make a combine or anything because of COVID. And this was an opportunity. He came in and lit it up. Like he scored 6 tries in 10 games, which is absurd. Again, had never played rugby before. He's going to be a guy that winds up playing in the MLR. Like he was a guy that MLR coaches in the last match of the season. He plays fullback, which is kind of like free safety punt returner because you can kick the ball deep whenever you want in rugby. They're kicking him in the first half, and he's literally like Devin Hester. The coaches were like at halftime, we're like, we cannot kick the ball anymore. Like if you get in trouble deep in your own zone, like we'll find a way to get it out. Like don't kick it to that guy or he's going to burn us. So there's guys that like have just fallen through the cracks, guys that should be in the NFL, guys that just never got a shot out of college. It's another guy, Tani Tupo. He literally played for the Seahawks, the Falcons, the Cardinals, and he's 28. Like he should be doing something. He should not just be sitting at home. Like he should not have to get a new job. Like they can use his athletic ability in some other way, you know? So just to see like these guys, and they've really fallen in love with it too, which I think is a fun thing. Like I could see trying this out, you know, whatever. But it's been awesome. I could talk about these guys all day. There's another guy, Michael Bandy, he played at San Diego. He's playing in the spring league right now. He was the captain of the Exos up until a month before the season, got an opportunity to go back to spring league. I think he's like the leading receiver in the spring league right now. Like I would not be surprised if this guy winds up at an NFL training camp, like at playing receiver. So they did a really good job recruiting these crazy high caliber athletes that just for one reason or another didn't make it to their ultimate goal. And I think with this season in the books, it's only going to be easier to get new guys coming in the fall and run it back next year. So it's the sky's the limit. And like I said, it's been the most fun I've ever had doing work, just covering these guys, being around these guys and getting to know them.
I love it, man. I think it's a great opportunity. I think it was a great idea. I mean, it's fun just to think about, you know, if you were just throwing people out there like Capri Bibbs, like let's say if Capri Bibbs all of a sudden just decided, you want to know what? I want to play rugby. Like that dude was tough to bring down anyways. I couldn't even imagine what a dude with like his insane like athleticism and strength could do out there.
Right. And this is no knock. And I think like this idea has not been super well received within the rugby community for several different reasons. And I think they have, you know, ground to stand on in some places, but like there's just not a Capri Bibbs in rugby, man. Like there's just not like an athlete of his caliber playing rugby. Like, and another guy, like I was going back through my brain, like when you were kind of tossing out topics, like D Hart is another dude that sticks out to me. Like D Hart was the man at CSU, right? He made the decision to leave school a little bit too early, didn't end up sticking like in the NFL. Like that guy he's still like 28. Like he could still pick it up right now and have 2 or 3 good seasons of rugby like in him where he could contribute to a team. Joe Hansley, that I love that episode you did with Joe Hansley. Like when they were assembling this team, he was like a guy that came to mind. Like he's a guy who's a superior athlete, didn't stick with the Raiders. He was a guy, you know, I was like, I threw him out when they were kind of like, oh, hey, do you know anybody that would be interested? And I was like, this guy was like Gatorade Player of the Year when I was in high school, and he contributed all 4 years at CSU. Like he's another guy that kind of came to mind. I don't know if they end up ever reaching out to him or not. But it's just a lot of, there's a lot of guys you can think of, like even off the top of your head, that could be, they didn't make it to the NFL. It's really hard to make the NFL. There's 100 guys on a team, if that, like if we're counting practice squad, all that stuff, not even.
Yeah, millions of players across the country.
Exactly. They shouldn't have to go do an office job. They shouldn't have to go work right away, right? So come play rugby, come try this new sport. So I'm like I said, I'm excited to see where the future, holds for this program, because this year was probably way more of a success than I think anyone would have imagined, like back in last summer when this kind of was all coming together. So I'm looking forward to seeing like what the next, crop of athletes, because I do really think it's just going to get better. They're just going to get better athletes. The marketing machine is kind of like, just kind of working through word of mouth, because these guys' friends have come and said, this was fun. They took good care of us. We got to learn how to play rugby. Like, you should come do it too. You're not doing anything. Like, don't go coach receivers at your high school just yet. Like, come try to play rugby. You can do that in 3 years. So
I got to imagine, like you said, it's only going up, and that's not even, me trying to, like puff you up because you're on the podcast. I mean, once they see that it works, and, like you said, the word of mouth, like, all right, this looks pretty cool. Or, it's like anything. You just got to get somebody to try. And then once that first domino falls, the rest is going to happen. Like, as soon as you guys land just one of those, like a Joe Hansley, like if you land somebody like that, that's like, an all conference player locally, but like doesn't make it, and then that guy goes on to be a superstar, then it's just going to be considered like a normal thing for people to do. Like, well, I didn't make it in football, I'll go try rugby.
Right. And one of those guys that did actually, the Exos did get their hands on this year was Teron Beckham. That's Odell Beckham Jr.'s cousin. He was like hot name in the streets 5 or 6 years ago. Bleacher was writing all these articles about him. But like, he's a guy, he has like almost 600,000 Instagram followers. And like, he, came and had a great time and has been, very vocal about like how this is fun and how he thinks this is it's just kind of cool to see him discover it in the way that's like hit me, 10 years ago. Like, it's hitting him now. And that's kind of been the same thing with all these guys. Like, you get in, you start, playing, you start like getting to feel the culture, like get to feel the people. And every single one of these guys have been like, this is so fun. Like, I was talking to these guys that had played SEC football, like after their first match down in New Orleans. And they were like, this is seriously the most fun I've had since I was like in 5th grade in gym class. So it's, like I said, I could talk about this program all day. It's been super fun to be around, super fun to cover, super fun to get to know these guys. And I'm just excited to see, where they go and how they look when they do get to the MLR. And then honestly, like, Jeelan is a guy who could play international rugby in 2 years. Like, he could be, on the next World Cup team. And that would be nuts from not knowing one single thing about rugby 3 years ago to, playing international rugby. Like, he's a guy that I know just from talking to the coaches and being around, other guys and just watching him myself. Like, he is a guy who could be playing overseas for sure in a year. He's a monster.
DraftKings Sportsbook is not only my favorite sportsbook, but also America's top-rated sportsbook. I love using DraftKings Sportsbook because it's easy to navigate, plenty of instructions for new bettors, and nearly limitless ways to bet on all of the action. My friends, my family, everyone is loving DraftKings Sportsbook, and I know you will too. Just listen to this great offer. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in site credits. That's right, pick any basketball team that is still in contention. Bet $1, if that team wins, you win $100 in site credits. Don't forget though, DraftKings also offers great odds and promotions on baseball, hockey, so much more all week. DraftKings Sportsbook is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code DNVR when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits just by betting on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game. And if they do, you're going to walk away with $100 in free credits. Again, that's with the promo code DNVR for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only, new customers only. Wagers paid out in site credits, restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Have a gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Kind of going back a little bit, what was the reaction from like the rest of Major League Rugby when Colorado decided, this is what we're going to do. You said the opinions in the rugby community are kind of split on terms of like what this vision is and whether it's good or not. And I imagine some of it is them being kind of like rugby special, like we don't need, wash ups or like has-beens in other sports. But like you said, it's just the context of if they are great athletes, why not get them in? But what was the reaction, I guess, from the rugby community as a whole? Did they support it, or were they like, this isn't going to work?
So kind of like half and half. I think more people like the plan and the idea and just like the initiative to do it than people that don't. I did a podcast back in February where they were just kind of trying to figure out more about this stuff, and having covered it, as closely as have since the idea was birthed. I went on to talk about it, and it was like the way the show's set up. It was like a live show. So the person right before me is a prominent scrum half that played here in the past, and he was saying, best of luck to him, but I don't think that's the way to move rugby forward. And this is kind of what I said on the show, and what I say when people have asked this question in the past is like, you're right in a way. Like, it's not the way, but it is a way to move the sport forward, right? It's not, there's no one set way to plan this out in the future, and this is the code, this is what you have to do to follow it. But it is a way, and it's a way to grow the player pool. It's a way to get, better athletes involved. So you're right. It's not the only way. And then the other thing I say too is like, you can teach a guy to play rugby, but you can't teach a guy to be 6'5" and be 280 and run like a 4.5 40. You can't teach that, but you can teach that guy how to play rugby. It doesn't go both ways. So if you have the opportunity to do that, why wouldn't you do it? To me, like, it just seems like, this is just a different way to add to what's already growing with the MLR, with like a traditional pathway of play rugby from when you're 8 years old, and then, work your way up through high school, and then go play in college, and then play in the MLR, and then, eventually get to the national side. But the problem that exists with that, which has existed in the USA for 50 years, right, is the best rugby players at 12 years old are also going to be the best football players at 12-year-old. They're also going to be the best basketball players at 12-year-old. They're going to be the best wrestlers. They're going to play rugby up through high school. And then when you get to college, they're going to, if you have an opportunity, the option between a rugby scholarship and a football scholarship, you're not going to take the rugby scholarship. You're going to take the football scholarship because that's where the opportunity is, right? So then you're sitting at the spot where you hope that after they're done doing their other sport, after they're done wrestling, after they're done playing football, you have to just hope that they want to come back and play rugby. That's like hope is not a strategy, like that's not like a strategy that works. So this is just another way to add to what's already being built. Like there's, it's like a river, right? We're all trying to get into the river. There's a bunch of tiny little streams. This could be another stream. And I think it's going to produce a lot of players that people might not have expected.
I think there's quite a few sports that kind of suffer from that same problem. People that, big baseball fans, soccer fans, they say the same thing, like the best athletes in the US, they aren't playing soccer. They're playing basketball. They're playing football, and baseball, same deal. Like, why would I play baseball? I'm going to do this. But if you can grow it, you can create that interest, then maybe that starts to shift. So is one of the big keys kind of growing the youth game, which I know it has a lot in Colorado. We're seeing leagues pop up. But I think we probably need it to grow like more on a national level, I would guess, before we kind of get that ball really rolling in the right direction.
I think, one of the things I've seen just being in rugby for as long as I have is if you can grow the youth game, that's what you should do, right? The more kids you have with rugby balls in their hands from when they're compared to football, compared to any other sport, like I was playing football the second I could, when I was 7 years old, like I had a helmet on. If you could do that with rugby, like you're going to breed fantastic rugby players. That's how it is in New Zealand. That's how it is anywhere, anywhere that rugby's huge. So obviously, like it's always about growing grassroots. That's going to be like the way. And then like we talked about earlier, if you instill a love in rugby in those guys and those guys and girls, and they do want to come back eventually, that's a win for you, right? They already have the basic skills. But you
need the other guys too. Yeah.
Exactly. You need everybody you can get. And this is a way to get everybody.
I wonder how rugby could take the next step, like culturally, in terms of just growing and becoming more mainstream. And I think what you guys are doing, honestly, is a great way, just because you're bringing some name recognition. Like, whether, rugby purists that dislike other athletes coming into their sport want to admit it or not, if you had a guy like Capri Bibbs, all of a sudden, 3,000 CSU fans are watching the Colorado XOs because they just want to see Capri Bibbs.
Exactly. And this is a question that a lot of people have, thrown out there, especially in the last couple of years as rugby gets bigger in the United States. Like, how do you make it take the next step? And when I worked for MLR, I had the opportunity to talk to a PFT commenter. He's a guy that played rugby in Austin. He knows like some of the commentators that have kind of like run. And I've asked him that too. He's obviously like an expert at growing like a podcast and growing a social following. And I asked him, and the answer like lies within it's so against the ethos of rugby as a sport. Like, rugby is such a not like an anti, recognition. Like, this is the true team game. Like, it's never about me. It's
not the individual. I've noticed that, and it's a cool culture. It's very like wholesome and pure in that way.
But in terms of like making it massive, like the NBA, that's just not the way to do it, like, and it sucks because it's just against everything that rugby is. But like, to make it big, there needs to be a shift in that. Like, there needs to be, feuds like that exist between the Broncos and the Raiders. Like, those don't exist. Like, it's always very respectful. Another thing too is like in rugby, you rarely have your last name on your jersey because your number on the field like represents the position you play. So like, if you're number 10, you're always playing fly half. Like, that is your position. If you're number 12, you're inside center. So I could play fly half this week, and then a better fly half comes next week. He gets back from injury, and then I go play on the wing. Like, I'm still playing, I'm still starting, but it's completely different. I'm wearing a different jersey. And like, that identification, with that specific player, like, I could be the biggest Ben Pinkelman fan of all time, and I want to have like a Ben Pinkelman jersey, but Ben Pinkelman's jersey rotates, So like,
yeah, that's interesting.
Too, like, so one of the teams, the Austin Gilgronis down in Texas, like, they've kind of are switching that up. Like, they're putting last names on jerseys, and while the jerseys may rotate, if a guy primarily plays flanker and he's my favorite player, like, I can go into their pro shop and buy like a flanker jersey with this guy's last name on it. So there's like things that rugby will need to evolve in some way to make it bigger. But there's other things like I don't ever see like there being a LeBron in that sense, because the guys that play rugby just literally just aren't like that. And that's kind of one of the things that the football players and the wrestlers and stuff that came to the XOs have learned. That's something I know they spend a lot of time talking about. Like, when we score a try, we're not like pulling a Sharpie out of our sock and throwing the ball like into the, third deck. Like, we don't do that. That's just not like how rugby is. But that's, I could say from me personally, like, I like that about football. I like when somebody, does like
that's what I wanted to ask you as somebody that likes other sports.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like, I want to see shit talking. I want to see celebrations. And I get that probably goes against, the culture and like the origins of the game, and you want to be respectful and all of that. But, baseball's having the same problem. We can try and be respectful to what made baseball in 1920, right, but nobody's fucking watching you.
And I think the thing, I've had this conversation with a lot of people too, is like, we are literally in the stages of like, we are crafting American rugby, like, as a whole, like, whether it be the XOs, whether it be the MLR, whether it be like the college, like, we should make this our version of it, right? Like, we shouldn't play the same type of rugby that they play in England or that they play in New Zealand. Like, there's things that we should do because it makes sense in America, or like, we think it's good and cool and it, helps it grow. We shouldn't just stick to the status quo because that's how it was when, William Webb Ellis like created rugby. And yeah. So
is that the actual creator of rugby?
That is, yeah. That's a deep cut. I was trying to pull out the year, but it's escaping me right now. I think it's like 1812 or something like that.
That's all right. You don't want somebody on the internet to tweet at you and be like, see, it was 1811, you moron.
Justin, they don't give a Twitter account to just anybody, man. Those people are, they know what they're talking about.
So I don't know, man. I think it'd be cool. Like, I get the internal struggle though, because I mean, it's like anything. You don't want gatekeeping. You don't want, because you want it to grow, but also you want the sport to be, special and what you love about it. And so I imagine the people that have been involved with rugby, for like 30, 40 years, they're like, well, I don't care if, 100,000 people are there. Rugby is awesome and I love it. So I don't care what they think.
Right. Those people always exist. And that's the thing about rugby too, is like, and I was talking to Vote about this last year. Like he came on and we did we made a starting 15 full NBA players. It was very fun. I very much enjoyed
I love that idea.
Yeah. I asked Nate Ebner, he plays for the Giants. He is a rugby guy. He played for the Patriots. He's going to play in the Olympics if he makes the team again. I asked him that question and he hated that question. But that kind of goes to show, like, he is a traditional rugby guy. And I asked him, I was like, if you had to make a first 15 of NFL players, who would you pick? And he's like, I wouldn't pick NFL players. I'd pick rugby players. They don't know what they're doing. So I
might have to get you on to do a 15 might be hard, but we could do like pick a sevens team with like all-time Colorado State athletes, or even.
Dude, we could do a 15s team. I think we could. We could do both if you want. Like, and that would be fun too, because it's like the specializing of the, of the talents and what they're good at and stuff like that. But I was explaining to Vote, like, rugby is so, what I really like about it is that respect, because you have to respect your opponents, like, because you already mentioned it is so niche. You have to respect the official, because without, like, if that team doesn't show up to play, like, you're not playing rugby that day, right? Like, this is the 23 guys, like, from this area that are coming to play you. And if you are disrespectful to them and they decide, like, screw you, I'm not coming to play in your game, then you're just screwed. Then you have one less rugby game to play. Same thing with the ref. Like, if you're mean to the ref and the ref's like, I'm not reffing this game, like, you're screwed. You don't have a ref. You can't play rugby without a ref. You need a ref to play rugby. So that's one thing I appreciate about that. But going back to, like, one of the biggest issues, I'm using air quotes here.
Air quotes, yeah.
Yes. Issues in rugby that has been like a hot topic since MLR became a thing. Is so in rugby, after you score your try, which is your touchdown's worth 5 points, you kick the conversion. You kick the conversion on the spot on the field from wherever you scored the try. So if you score the try, like, out by the pylon, you have to kick it from that plane. So you got to bring it back really far. But while you kick the conversion, which is worth 2 points, at rugby, literally anywhere else in the world, the whole place gets really quiet. You have to respect the kicker. Like, it's hard to make these, so everyone's super quiet. You respect him. You just it's up to him to make the conversion. And that's like been a rule in rugby, but that's not like how it is in America, right? Like, think about shooting free throws. Like,
oh yeah, we heckle everyone.
Exactly. We want to jump in and talk about this. Mello. Is it wrong to Mello while he's shooting free throws? Like, is it wrong to boo the kick, give the kicker the business when he's kicking like, in America, that hasn't been the case. Like, we as Americans have not respected the kicker for these clubs. Like, I've been to matches in Seattle. I've been to matches in San Diego. I've been to matches in New Orleans. Like, I've been to matches in a lot of MLR cities. And Seattle's was notorious for not respecting the kicker. Like, they're very loud. They boo. They go crazy and that's like an issue that has existed in American rugby. And the most viral clip that has come out of MLR in this last week was in Utah. Austin's kicking a conversion, and Utah's mascot rode like a Harley Davidson, like, in front of him. And that blew up, like, on the internet, because all these different, in New Zealand and all these different publications across the world, like, MLR is awesome. MLR is awesome. Like, and they're kind of starting to see, like, this is like kind of quirky and weird, but like, that's American.
They liked it.
They did like it for the most part.
I thought it was going to be like them being like, oh, look at these idiots. Like, they're ruining our game. I'm
sure those people exist. And I would like to see, like, if those people had the same tune, if they did that in England or something. But
yeah,
the most of the publications and stuff I've seen, like, make tweets about it, are like, this is why MLR is the best league in the world. Part 384. Like, this guy rode a Harley Davidson, like, in front of this warrior, like, Panther mascot, just riding a motorcycle across the field while this guy's trying to kick the conversion. But that's what rugby needs, like, we shouldn't not ride a motorcycle on the field because other countries tell us not to. Like, if we want to do that, who cares? Do it. And if that's what's blowing up on the internet, because that's, like, uniquely American.
American sports fans love a rowdy time. So if you let them just go, like, party for 3 hours and get really into it, like, make it a good time. It's not golf. It's a contact sport.
Right. And that's like notoriously like the Hong Kong Sevens, like the craziest weekend of rugby in China. That's what people do. They dress up in funny costumes. Sevens tournaments are 3 days long, and you literally just drink for 12 hours, watch rugby, be crazy. At Infinity Park here, the third weekend of August every year for the last 10 years, they have Rugby Town Sevens, which is an international sevens tournament. Teams from Barbados. And it's the same thing. Like you come on Friday, I think the matches start at 10 a.m. on Friday, and you just, you have beers and you watch rugby for 3 days straight. There's fireworks. Like that. The rugby's about having a good time. And I think, more people will realize that as it continues to get bigger here.
Not unlike college, which, we kind of hinted at the beginning, and then we said it at the beginning. You and I went to school together. We worked at the Collegian. We had some classes together. I'm going to get you on to talk more rugby in the future because I want to continue to help grow it. And me, myself, like I enjoy learning about it from you. It's fun to see something niche and something that is like, I don't know. It's cool to be in a state that's like actually making an impact on the sport for the entire country.
Colorado that was another thing in my notes, Justin. Colorado is the place to be when it comes to rugby. You've got a bunch of high school programs that are perennial powerhouses, Regis Jesuit, Palmer and Colorado Springs. Denver East always has a good program. Fort Collins High School has a program. Valor's getting into it, unfortunately. Fortunately, whatever. It's good for the game. I feel bad for the poor high school kids that have to play rugby against Val. They're not very good right now, so if there's any Val people listening to this, sorry, not sorry, I guess.
No, it's all right. Stay humble. You guys are winning everything. You guys, they deserve a little bit of humble roots.
Valor beat me in the high school. I lost state championship to the McCaffreys and knocked me out my senior year. So I have a spot for Val in my heart. There's good men's and women's clubs everywhere. Denver Barbarians, Water Dogs, NoCo Flamingos up north. CSU men and women both have clubs. Exos, obviously. And then you have USA Rugby is headquartered here at Infinity Park at Glendale. So you can watch international rugby for less than $50. Like that's a tough deal to beat.
I mean, I can't think of many other sports where you could literally watch the people that are going to be representing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And get to be them up at close too. Like that's the cool thing about Glendale. Like the seats, you're right there.
Yeah, you're on the field, dude. You can literally sit like on the bench with them. It's not roped off. You could sit next to the guys that are about to go in the match. So, but yeah, I was very much looking forward to talking about college with you too, Justin. I hope I didn't take up too much time yapping about rugby.
No, I mean, that's what this was all about. The college stuff is just the icing on the cake. The point of the podcast was to talk about, the XOs and give people an idea of what they are and all the ties to CSU. And I think we did that. Again, go check out, Colton's doing podcasts on rugby all the time. He's got daily content. He's writing about it on the site. And you don't want to miss out because now's the time to get in. You can be the cool guy that's like, I had a Colorado XOs shirt in 2021.
And what's even like the best part about all their rugby content, Justin, is it's free. You don't need a subscription for this stuff. So this is a good trial run. Like maybe you're on the fence about, signing up for a DNVR subscription. Check out the rugby stuff. You want to check out, you're on the fence about the DNVR Rams content. Like check out the rugby stuff, see if you like it, see if you like the layout of everything, and then take that plunge because you won't regret it. It's the best coverage in the city.
Well said, man. We just make it more fun to be a sports fan, and that includes being a rugby fan. It's a niche community. It's a tight community, but somebody has to be the voice of it, and that's why my man Colton is here. It's cool to see it growing.
Do my best for sure.
I got to ask you, we obviously, we started at the Collegian, and that's more of traditional print journalism. And I don't think either of us are really doing what, would be considered, traditional journalism in the sense of the classes we were taking at CSU and all of that. It's a lot more fun though, right?
It is. And in the same sense as the rugby is this stuff didn't really the stuff that we're doing arguably didn't really exist when even we were in school.
No, it really didn't.
5 years ago, just this rugby opportunities didn't exist. I wouldn't have this job if MLR didn't, start. I wouldn't. It's just kind of crazy. It's all about timing, and just been fortunate to be in a place at DNVR where, they do give you free reign. Like you can really do whatever you want. Like just make it cool. They give you these opportunities to learn and grow and explore all this different stuff and do these live streams and, record at the bar. Like all this stuff is just they're just, the sky's been the limit, and it's been fun to just learn and grow like alongside everybody else.
We have partnered with a premier dispensary for you guys to get some smoking hot deals with. Solace Meds has 4 convenient Colorado locations, 1 in Fort Collins, 1 in Wheat Ridge, 1 off of Broadway, and 1 just blocks away from the DNVR bar on East Colfax. Solace has some banging deals all June long. You are not going to want to miss out. I'm talking 15% off all Gold Shelf concentrates, 20% off all of Wana tinctures and tarts, 20% off all of Mountain Select rosin and cartridges, 25% off all of Blues Brother joint packs. They have it all. On top of that, you can get those crazy deals and an additional 20% off your entire order when you use DNVR20 at checkout. Solace Meds makes your cannabis shopping experience a delight. Just head over to solacemeds.com. Purchase from there. Again, use that code DNVR20 to save 20% on your entire purchase. If you happen to hit up the Wheat Ridge location, you can get a free Solace bar or King Cone when you mention the code DNVR20 as well. That's the Wheat Ridge location of Solace Meds. Head in, mention DNVR20, get 20% off everything, and a free Solace bar or King Cone. I'm going to make you go down like memory lane a little bit and just, let's talk a little bit of Old Town, a little bit of CSU. Everybody loves that. If you're going up to Fort Collins, where would the spots be that you'd have to, like, let's say you got a couple days, like where are you eating? Where are you grabbing a drink? What are your must visit spots in FOCO?
So I was going through, and I admittedly have not been to CSU very much since I graduated. I think I was there once last year, once the year before, but Lucky Joe's is like one of my favorite bars like in the world. I've been to a few bars. That one is at the top of the list for sure. In college, I remember like killing a lot of time at Road, going over to Road 34 after school or something. Then I think a sneaky, like, good answer is the Skeller. Like, I was going back thinking about like how much time I actually spent at the Skeller. Like,
well, part of it with the newsroom being right there.
Right there, but like you finish up class and you text your buddies like, "Hey, where you at?" Like, "Oh, I'm over here." It's like, "Oh, let's go to the Skeller really quick and grab a beer." The Skeller's awesome, man. Like, that's one of the things I miss a lot about college, and I have been thinking about college recently. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because
we're getting old, dude.
I know we're almost been out 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't like to think about it.
Yeah, that's weird. Almost out longer than we've been in. So those were my bar spots. I didn't, of course, you would make the rounds to Bondi and Rec Room and
that's nobody's place of choice, though. That's just where you end up because that's how the night progresses.
Exactly, and it's like it was part of the week. It was part of the college experience. You could not go there and not, wind up in those
sticky floors.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I think of with Bondi is don't wear good shoes.
You'll get ruined. And then there was one night, the Drunken Monkey. I don't think it's there anymore. But that
R.I.P. man.
Dude, I had a pair of gray Nikes that I wore in there. Like, I had just taken them out of the box, and those things went like right in the trash the next day. It looked like I had walked through like a freshly paved road. It was disgusting. My shoes were just black. Food spots, though, I love Crazy Carl's. I really do think that's like some of the best pizza, like anywhere. I did the Beat the Clock deal that kept me alive a lot on, I think it was Monday and Thursday.
Still the best deal in town. Like, you literally can't, a large pizza, if you call and get it for like $5.25 or whatever, whatever time you call.
That was you set your watch to 5 o'clock, call right away, just get a, large one topping pizza for $5. That was good stuff. Love the Pickle Barrel. I need to make a trip up and visit the Pickle Barrel. And then another one, Charcoal Broiler. That place is
so good. It's so weird too.
It is a weird place, but that's kind of what's like nice about it. And that was the last place I ate there with my parents the day I moved home from Fort Collins. I graduated. Next day was Mother's Day. I ate at the Charcoal Broiler. And then actually the last time I was up in Fort Collins last summer, stopped by the Charcoal Broiler before I drove back down to Denver. You can just get the weirdest combination of food. You can get like a T-bone steak and like a spaghetti and meatball like combination, but it's so good, man. That place is awesome.
The ambiance is all weird in there. It's like dark lighting and the decor is all
Yeah.
weird. I
See,
love the charcoal broiler.
see some truckers going. That's how you know it's like some good eats too.
Good sustenance. That's like, and it's affordable, it's good food. It doesn't cost too much.
Exactly.
Maybe don't take like your first date there or anything. You got to
Oh,
make sure that they understand what they're getting into. That's like one of those, you got to know somebody's personality before you take them there.
yeah. And that's actually, I didn't even know it existed till probably like sophomore year. Honestly, one of my dad's friends went to CSU in like literally like the 60s or something. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, gotta go charcoal broiler. Like, just go in the back door. Like, no one's gonna stop you. Sit at the bar. And he's like, when I went in there for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, I know why you like to eat here, but I don't knock you at all, man. It's good stuff. It's a good recommendation.
That was a solid list. I mean, Road and Lucky Joe's are definitely my favorite bars. I've been asking people this because I've got like this is my last summer in Fort Collins or whatever. Technically, I'll still be covering CSU, so I'll still be up there quite a bit. But I'm moving down to Lakewood, and so I'm like, I gotta hit all the OG spots, make sure I don't miss anything in my last summer up here.
That's good. Another one that just came to mind was Yum Yums. Did you ever eat there? Is that
Oh
even
yeah,
Yeah, that was like a Sunday treat because that was a little more money than I usually.
yeah. That was like that's a splurge.
Yeah, so that was like, go to Yum Yums, get like a meat plate before the Sunday night football game. That was a good spot too. So I lived like East Campus, so I had friends that lived in West Campus, obviously ventured over there. But that was another spot that just hit my brain right there.
Oh man, I miss those days. Like I don't miss the stress of exams or any of that stuff, but even something as simple as just like the Sunday night football dinner, like there were just like certain pleasures in life that you were just like, oh, this is just like life is good right now.
It was like I missed getting out of class at like 2 p.m. on a Friday, and then it's kind of starting to get nice out. You go home and play NHL for 3 hours and like eat Wendy's, and then make a trip down to Old Town. Like I miss those days, but I don't miss like having literally $0 at all times. Like I don't know how I'm gonna eat tomorrow. I don't miss
Yeah, I
that
got to
stuff,
stretch
but
this
yeah.
$17 for 13
Would,
days
like,
somehow.
I know if I go to Subway on Tuesday, I can get like a 6-inch sandwich for like $3. I don't miss thinking about all that stuff, but I do. I've been thinking a lot about college recently, and there's some good memories for sure.
I'm going to let you go here in a sec because I've already taken up too much of your time. But I got to ask you just because, we worked at the Collegian, we got to cover some fun stuff sports wise. What are like some of your favorite CSU sporting memories when you think back to either, as a student media, however you want to take that? Just what are your, top CSU sporting moments?
Yeah, I guess one of them is like the entire 2014 football season. That season was so fun. I missed the
Doesn't that
win.
feel like 20 years ago now?
I know. I was thinking that too. I missed the game where everyone stormed the field. Was at Utah
Utah
State.
State.
Yeah,
Oh, you missed homecoming.
I was in Kansas. I had some like family stuff going on, so I was in. I remember watching that on TV, being like, "Man, I wish I was there." I missed that game, but just like that, even that showdown, that's kind of what made me think of D Hart. I was literally like in the front row in that end zone they were running in the second half. That season was awesome. I went to the Air Force game, unfortunately, where they lost on the.
Me too.
And it took 4 hours to get home, to drive 60 miles or whatever it was.
I don't remember what happened, but I think there must have been like a bad accident or something. But yeah, it was literally, I drove from Hill City, Kansas to the Springs like that morning of, so I could get there for like the 1 p.m. kickoff or whatever. And then I spent 5 hours in traffic going back to Denver with my family after the game.
I remember that. That was when Yik Yak was a big thing too, and I was flapping my gums on Yik Yak to all the cadets, and it was quite the evening. And then I sat sad in the car for 4 hours. So I guess everything catches up to you. And then, I mean, obviously that's 2016-17 CSU men's basketball season. I covered it not very well. That was like, that was when there was like 8 guys available because everyone was ineligible, and they had Juan Sabino.
You got no access. Like I thought that's what covering a team was like, because my first experience was covering U Stacy, and I was just like, oh, you don't even have to go to practice. They didn't even have practice availability.
Yeah, I never went to practice. I just remember I like was going through the motion. I'm sure everybody hated me. It was just like because I didn't really want to do it, to be honest. Like, I didn't want to cover that team. I would go to the press conference. I would ask no questions. I would, I didn't go to any of the away games. So that was bad for me. That was a big time learning experience. I learned like everything you're not supposed to do. Got like 5 or 6 parking tickets that year because I never got like a parking pass. So I would always park in the towers next to Joe Parker, and I would get tickets on the regular. But that was just such a crazy season, just like how well that they performed when they had 7 guys available every night. They had like Juan Sabino was coming off the track team and walking like minutes sometimes, which was crazy. And they went farther than they probably should have. So that season was crazy. And I do remember one, it was like a Saturday afternoon game, Saturday morning game or whatever. Eustace was doing a press conference, and you might remember this. He just got up and left. Like, he was just in the middle of it, and he was just like, okay, I got to go. I have to catch a flight somewhere. And everyone was just like, okay. And so I packed up my bag, and I was walking out the front door, and he comes out, and he has like, I'm not joking, he has probably 15 Diet Cokes, like not in any sort of container at all, just like 15 cans of Diet Cokes that he's carrying. And I was walking out with Eddie Hers. We hold the door open for him because he has no free hands. And he's like, oh, thanks, guys. I'm catching a flight. I got to drive down DIA. I'm flying somewhere. And we started to talk about like Seth Rogen movies that he just downloaded on his iPad. And I just remember being like, that's this guy, man. This guy is something else. Just so weird, but something I have never forgotten about, obviously. Just some wild stuff. And he would go on all these tangents about, you'd ask him a question about I didn't, but you would ask him a question about
yeah, that's good.
I didn't do it. You'd ask him the question about some players, and he would be, oh, I ate this steak, 2 nights ago. Like, he would, the stuff he would say, I was just like, what is going on here?
You just gave me like 3 very specific Larry Stacey memories, and I love all of them. So first, the Diet Cokes.
Yeah.
I've been told from people inside the program, he drank on average anywhere from like 12 to 18 Diet Cokes a day. Now, granted, obviously, Larry had, the past with alcohol and stuff. So like, right. I never judged him there. Like, if that's the vice that you pick, I love soda, but it was just insane to me that he could take that much carbonation.
Oh,
like,
that's a Nikola Jokic diet, right? That's a Nikola Jokic diet.
That's how greatness is made.
Exactly.
Is a gallon of Coke a day.
Yeah.
Another weird one. I was leaving Pita Pit over. It was like across the street from campus. Mm-hmm. And Larry Stacey comes out of Smoky Monkey with like e-cigarettes because he would always have those vape pens.
Yeah.
And he like recognized me. This was probably that year. It was probably like that 2016-17. So he like recognized, like, you're the collegian kid. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he looks at me and I see the pen and he's like, oh, this is nicotine only. There's no funny business going on here. And just the way he said it.
Yeah, you're an adult, Larry. Go for it.
I was like, all right, like, I don't care. Like, you do you.
Yeah.
And then the last one, just as far as like the press conferences and the craziness, I asked him, somebody got hurt. And so Anthony Bonner was going to have to play more minutes. And I basically was like, he's been a role player. He's been pretty successful for you guys in that role. Do you see him being successful, with him having to handle more responsibility, scoring, ball handler, all that? He went on, I think I still have the audio because I saved it on my computer because it was so crazy.
Yeah.
It was 13 minutes long. A rant about a role player is still just going to be a role player. And then he started talking about Harrison Barnes and how he got this like big contract and they want him to not be a role player, but he's still a role player. And so at the end, I was still like, so like, what does this mean for Bonner? Like,
yeah.
It was just such a trip.
Like I said, I wasn't like super jazzed. I didn't really want to be there anyway. I was trying, I was like,